Platform podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we're going to cover the Apple event. So, Apple did a special event called California Streaming on September 14, and we're going to cover that. So, let's try to go in the order of the show, and let's begin with their entry level iPad, $399 to compete with the Chromebook. They add the center stage. That was a feature they add to the iPad Pro at the beginning of the year, where the camera will follow you. It's a really, really neat feature. They improve the battery, make it 20% faster. But this is I think it's the first time they take a jab against the Chromebooks and saying, well, it's 3 times faster than a Chromebook. And I was like, hey, comparing to
Well,
which Chromebook? Hold
okay,
on.
and that's a really important point, and I'm glad we jumped into that right away because this is kind of what got them into some hot water with this initial release. Is the statement of that it's 3 times faster than the best-selling Chromebook. Well, let's take that apart a little bit. The best-selling Chromebook is a low-end, low-powered, consumer-level
Hundred and few
device.
$100 or $120.
Exactly. It's like it's literally the same price point as this iPad. Actually lower. It's like
No, it's way lower because
it's
this
like
iPad is
185.
399. I think that Chromebook we're talking about is $120.
So if you get a comparable priced Chromebook, it runs circles around this. So
Correct.
I have to question a little bit the sincerity of their statement. I understand where they're trying to position this because I think they're realizing, especially after 2020 and most of 2021, that Chromebooks have been kind of eating their lunch
Oh yeah.
in a near tablet productivity type device. So it makes sense to actually just mention it that, oh, this is similar. You should consider this if you're considering a Chromebook. I would say from a cross-platform perspective, though, compare your numbers, compare them carefully because it's not an apples to apples comparison by any stretch.
It is not. And actually my kids' school use Chromebooks.
Hmm.
Okay. And yes, they have iPads. Okay. Can they do the work they do in the Chromebooks and the iPad? Yes, they can. But the school is not going to give them iPads. It's going to give them Chromebooks. So if you come right now and ask me, being the Apple fan, okay, and if you ask me, okay, I have my kid goes to your kids go to the same school, and you ask me what to get, I will tell you go and get a Chromebook. Why? Because that's what the school has. That is, the kid had a problem on the device, he will be able to go to the IT support person and he will be able to get the answer because that's what she's working every day. Can she give them support on the iPad? Of course, she may or may not. I don't know. But the Chromebook, I know she knows. So if you are not the IT guy, get them Chromebooks, get them the same weapon that everybody's using.
Yeah, I agree. And in those types of environments too, it really comes down to repairability, replaceability, and availability of the products themselves when they're in use. And something like an education environment, originally there was a push to put iPads in those environments. And in some higher end schools, you'll find iPads. But I think across the board, it's a more resilient solution to look at something like a Chromebook. But
But
not to derail the whole thing. I think Apple does not do themselves a disservice to place their device back in this conversation.
no, we agree, we agree. But even with that, if the school will come and ask me a recommendation, okay, I believe that Chromebook not only is cheaper, but it's a lot more resistant than an iPad.
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely one of those devices that will take the abuse. And if it gets broken, not much of a tear will be shed for it, unlike a demolished iPad. So, so that's, and it's nice to see, the improvements, things like the center stage capability, which is a very nice feature, especially if you're using this as
It's a virtual.
kind kind of an ancillary tool for virtual conferencing and things like that. I think it's a very realistic upgrade. It's what you kind of expect, and this goes to a little bit of what we were talking about before the show. The overall tone of the presentation and the event, from what I gather, was fairly subdued. It wasn't, fireworks and dancing girls.
It was not. And, I feel that as this pandemic progresses, Samsung is getting better and better and better events, and Apple is getting more blunt the events. You know, they they are missing that excitement, that even they, and we will talk about this later, they launched a beautiful iPad mini, but it still was like, okay, there was no, for sure there is not a Steve Jobs era announcements, okay, where this will has been incredibly push on the marketing side. This was more like, okay, these are the specs and the specs are better and these are we are better. Uh, I don't know. Samsung instead, this is my opinion. It's not that they don't mention the specs, but they mention more for the common user who I understand. You tell me gigahertz and LTE and 5G, and I know what you're talking about. If you tell that to some other people I know, they have no clue. They don't, you know. If you ask some of my clients, well, do you need LTE or 5G on their tablet? They have no clue. Okay. They need the thing to connect to the web so they can download their email. Okay. And that's where I think Samsung did is been doing a much better job into bring that to the masses. This is what this technology will make your life better. This event instead was okay, it's 20% faster, three times more than the average or the must sell Chromebook. Yeah, what that means something for you and I. Okay, we check what is the best sell, we
Hmm.
check the speed and say, I don't know. For the average, that's just a spec. It's a feature. You're not. I'm not buying features.
Do you think the tone and the messaging was targeted more at, I want to say, the Apple loyalists than
Mhm.
trying to develop converts?
I
Because
think so.
Samsung's presentations as of late clearly have been targeted around the people who aren't Samsung people.
Correct.
It sounds like this is the type of thing that's targeted around Apple people,
Apple people.
which makes sense. You establish, you take your base where it is and you maintain that base. It's much easier to keep a customer you have than to develop a new one. So that all stands to reason.
But I think that was the difference. You used to aim to the non-Apple people while making really happy the Apple people. The Apple people.
Mhm.
This event was for the Apple people, but you didn't make happy anybody.
Right.
Even you look at the reviews, and the reviews used to be there used to have polarity in the reviews and comment about the claims. This time was the announcement came, and it's the news after that has been really neutral.
I,
Yeah,
I
okay.
I did notice that this time is after the event, I literally had to go looking for
Yeah.
updates. I'm like,
Normally your
yeah,
RSS
that's all you,
blows. This
yeah,
time was like,
that's all you had. So, and I see that across some of the other items that they've released during this. We'll go from the least impactful all the way up to the one that made the biggest splash. But the next one, if I go smallest to biggest, the next one to me actually is the Apple Watch.
yeah,
It didn't make a major shift in anything. It didn't introduce anything significantly new. They've added, it's a little bigger screen. The display's brighter. It's a little bit better against dust. It's a little bit better against water. It charges a little bit faster. But otherwise, it's basically the same device, at least from what I'm seeing.
yeah. I they add the colors. They increase on the size, but I agree with you. It was an incremental improvement. It's a better watch than the six, maybe, but it wasn't something again from the four, from the five to the six. There was excitement around the new product.
Mhm.
This was like, okay, we did a little improvement in here. Here it is. I don't know.
Is it something that, again, going back to targeting the Apple loyalists, Apple feels they may already have the lion's share in this particular market? They've already made the impact feature releases over the past few years that they need to, and it's okay to, I hate to phrase it this way, but take a year off.
And
Samsung had to up their game this year. That was one of their big things this year, was to release a watch that actually made a difference in the wearables area. Apple probably didn't feel like they
well,
had to do that.
and the reality is they didn't. Okay, the reality is until they have something big, they are so ahead of the game that who
Mhm.
cares? I get it, but that was my impression with most of the show was okay, we did not need to really play big, so we are going to just play.
So here raises an interesting question in my mind, and I'm curious where you fall on this. For something like the Apple Watch, what would be a big splash thing for them? I mean, what would be the feature that stirs the interest and motivates the pocketbook?
Well, where they did good, okay, was they tied up really tightly the Apple Watch with the Fitness Plus, okay, with the Apple Fitness Plus.
Hmm.
And that's really, yeah, it's cool that you can get the notifications, the email, but I think this is really a fitness device,
Hmm.
at least how I see it. What I want to see better fitness. How you are using the data that you are collecting to give me better clues on the fitness. Again, what they did well was now they tied really, really close the Apple Watch with the Fitness Plus. They say, hey, you can do now workouts from 5 minutes to 45 minutes right there. You can see them on the watch. You can get the meditations, the guide
Hmm.
meditations. We will use the sensors to all this. So they did that really, really well. What they didn't do was really sell the hype. Again, it was okay. If you are going to upgrade, here it is like, okay, this year we're not going to really try to sell you guys, and we're just going to put the product in there. If you buy it, great. If you don't buy it, we will push you for next generation.
Hmm.
That's how it felt. There was no, you watch the whole streaming, and there is no excitement. There is no selling. There is no reason. Nobody told me, okay, or told anybody why this watch. So why I'm going to upgrade from my version 3?
Mm. Okay, that's
Even
interesting.
I'm wonder, now that we're saying this, I don't recall, I could be wrong, that they said this is our best watch ever. Tim Cook did not use that line. I'm sorry, he's been using that line since the first one.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting that he wouldn't call out, how do I phrase it this way? That your life would not be better or worse for having or not having this thing.
Correct.
It's just that this is a thing that we have and you can get it.
Mhm.
It's pretty matter of fact. Now, to move up the next rung of the ladder, we get to the iPhone 13s, which again is the logical progression of the sequence of phone releases. What did you think with what you saw of the iPhone 13s?
You know, what they did well in there is they now have an extensive line of phone from 399 on the iPhone SE to 999 to the iPhone 13 Pro. So you can now go and get the 11 or get the 12 or get the 13 or get the 13 Pro. That I think they did really well. But again, like all of these things, it felt or it was just a little upgrade. Given we need to understand that the iPhone now it's a mature product. Okay. Can you revolutionize it? I don't know. Okay. Right now it's minimum increments, the pictures and this and that. The bigger increments are really going to be the hardware. But again, there are things that these phones will do now that iOS 15 is coming out that are new, are innovative. Why they were not mentioned? Why they didn't mention the features that you are going to be able to use with this iPhone 13 now that the iOS 15 is coming out next week. There was
Do you
no
think
mention of any of that.
do you think we're getting back into, there was a period, I want to say 10 years ago, when smartphones were really starting to get their feet under them, where it was the constant hardware was the differentiator. You got new hardware, your phone was better. You got new hardware, your phone was better. Now, over the past 6, 7 years, I think, maybe 5, we've really been at a point where hardware is the baseline and it's the software that takes advantage of it. And when I look at the specs on just the 13, that's the way this almost reads to me, is that the 13 is improving the hardware to lay the groundwork for all the neat things that the software is going to be able to do. I mean, you're increasing the battery bright or the screen brightness by 28%. You've got an A15 chip in it. You've got new camera sensors, a cinematography mode, 2.5 hour increased battery life over the 12. These are all, I mean, they're good hardware improvements, but they're so much better with software that takes advantage of them. And that's
Correct.
where you get iOS 15 in the leverage piece. I think that's the same thing you're looking at on the Android side as well, and across the board.
But
Hardware is,
that's where I feel that there was missing. There was nobody pushing hard for those difference. For those, okay, fine. If I have a 12 and now I get a 13, what I'm going to be able to do different with the software, with the hardware, because
so,
the
and
camera enough may not be enough.
that's a really interesting angle to take too, because what you're basically telling your user base is whatever, there isn't anything on this new phone that you're not going to be able to do with the last generation phone when you get the new software.
Mhm.
So it's okay if you keep it. It's okay if you keep your 11, if you keep your 12. If you want to be on the latest and greatest platform, you can do that too. And looking at the pricing that they're positioning and the conversations they've been having around doing trade ins and that sort, that to me makes sense. If you've got an 11 or a 10, this is a logical time to take that step up. But as we were talking about in the pre show, if you've got a 12, well, there's nothing compelling to say, yep, I want to jump up.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to jump.
Looking at the Pro, I mean, the Pro again has all the extra features. The thing that struck me with the Pro is their commitment to the 120 megahertz screen refresh or
Correct.
120 hertz screening, which is nice.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
no
have I
question.
have a 120 hertz screen on, or no, I have a, can't remember if it's 120 or 90. Well, I have the higher hertz refresh on the Note 20 Ultra, and it's smooth. Don't get me wrong, it's smooth, but also it chews up battery. So when they're increasing the battery by 1.5 hours and then committing to that higher screen refresh, it's going to kind of work out to be a wash unless they do some other magic in the back end. We've got the dual sizes. It's nice that it has an optical telephoto zoom. I do like that. I mean, that's one of
Now
the
again, and
strength.
the improvement. It's not that there were not improvements.
Oh yeah,
Is they miss the magic. Apple, criticize it or not, has always, they introduced the the telephoto, but where was the magic about that? Where is the magic that the user is going to? That was what the missing. It's not that the components upgrade, they were gradual, yes, but they were not bad, but there was no magic.
it's interesting because it sounds like to me that this is truly a case where it's a product that should be in a white box with black lettering that says phone. I
Yeah,
mean, there's nothing overly compelling. Again, there's some nice features that are added. You know, a larger wide angle sensor, night mode on telephoto, ProRes video will come eventually. Larger storage up to a terabyte of storage, which if you're shooting 4K video, you have to have. So,
correct.
so again, it sounds like a good incremental increase in the platform, but nothing that jumps up and down and says, "Hey, this is what I have to go and do." Moving from that, though, we
Then
get
we
to,
come to the jewel of the show.
yeah, we come to the cross-platform item that really intrigues me the most because it's not only a staple, but it's also something that redefines the platform in a different way, and that's the new look iPad Mini. So tell me what you think about it.
So the new iPad Mini, they did a couple of things great. One, it's gorgeous. I mean, the no bezels, The fact that you keep this small device with an 8.3 inches screen is great. What they put the Apple Pencil second generation. They need to move the buttons. So the pencil, if you look at this pencil, this is the length of that thing. Okay. Because that's the reason they moved the buttons to the top so they could put the pencil stick magnetically on the side. So they did that incredibly well. They put the 5G. So they're telling you, hey, we're committed to this line. That it was another good news because the iPad mini, for the fans of the iPad mini, it's a thing that came and suddenly came the mini 4, and then we went a lot, came the mini 5. We didn't know what's going to die or what. And now they're showing, okay, no, we have commitment into this. We are going to continue with this line. And that for the fans of the mini, it's a great news. Who are the fans of the mini? Okay. And the fans of the mini are all those people who just need to carry that notepad. Okay. Nurses, because they fit on their purses, on their bags, doctors, because now they can carry a full device with LTE connection or Wi-Fi that
Mhm.
has access to everything. The iPad mini is my auxiliary device. I work on a 12.9 Pro. But if I'm leaving my desk, I'm running around, I'm just going to a meeting. Most of the times, what I take with me is the mini. I don't need anything else. Okay.
So go ahead.
That said, they seem to limit the storage on this that I didn't understand. They did two versions, 64 and 256.
Mhm.
I didn't understand why. Same thing they did with the iPad Air. Okay, on 2020, they released a 64 and 256. Why? Escape my logic.
You think it might be because they don't want to creep into the iPad Pro space? I mean, if you're pushing a need for more than 256 gig of storage on a device that size, you're probably either storing a heck of a lot of media files on there, or you're doing much more complex things and much more detailed things, which naturally gravitate towards the iPad Pros.
That is correct, but in this case, you don't compete because of the size. That's an argument that I'm completely on board with you with the iPad Air. Okay.
So, so here's my cross-platform spin on this. To me, I look at the specs on the iPad mini. I look at the way they positioned it. I look at it in relation to the iPhone 13. And to me, this is their stopgap answer to not having a foldable phone.
Mm-hmm.
It provides the same capabilities, roughly the same form factor, slightly larger, uh, but it meets in that mid space. So, have they sort of painted themselves into a corner with this now if they release a foldable phone?
I don't know, um, and I think it's a matter of where the users look,
Hmm.
and the non-geek users, okay, make still a distinction between the phone and their tablet. I know for you, you can go into the one device to work on the other one and doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But for a lot of, for example, clients I have, there is a clear line distinction between what they will do on their phone, what they will do on their tablet.
Right. And there are a lot of, it's not just me, there's a lot of people who have that designation, and it has nothing to do with the technology.
It has
It
nothing
has,
to do with the technology,
it
correct?
has, it has
So,
everything to do with their process.
so my question now is for those people, is the foldable phone a tablet or is it still a phone? Because if it's still a phone, then there is that distinction still.
So here's a question. I know the Mini offers 5G connectivity as an option, and this is coming from a point of ignorance on my own standpoint. Can you take an iPad Mini that does not have 5G and connect it to an iPhone using a hotspot, using the iPhone as a hotspot, rather?
Yes, you can. Yes, you
Okay.
can. And a lot of people do that because Apple put a hefty fee into get the 5G version. Okay, it's $160. Okay,
Hmm.
it's expensive. So a lot of people do that. That said, from the productivity perspective, there is a ridiculous. difference on speed, on the amount of things you will do. And I was one of those many years ago who at the beginning say, why do I want to have data? Even when I was iPad only, I
Hmm.
can tether with my phone all the time. And actually was a discussion with Michael Selinsky, co-author of the iPad only book and the Nosby CEO, that he argued with me and we argue about it. And then said, yes, what is true, it takes 20 seconds, but how many things that take 20 seconds you don't do because you need to tether?
No, that's true.
And when you look from that perspective and you look those gap of 20 seconds over a year, you pay those $160 10 times over.
And I could somewhat agree with that rationale. I think it's gotten easier on devices, and the reason why you use that as a comparison is because you can do the same thing on the Samsung devices and various other devices with that hotspot mode. But it then again goes back to that mindset of is this a device that's reaching that audience of needing a bigger screen than their phone or a smaller screen than their iPad?
And I think it's an I think it's this device is for the people who want a more portable iPad. Because
Okay.
when you get the 10.2, okay, that is the next size
Hmm.
of the iPad, at 10.2, it's not an easy device to put on your wallet or to carry in your adapter on your pocket or even to be on the field.
Hmm.
Okay, if you're in the field, it's much easier to carry this device, okay, than a
Yeah.
big device. So
That was one of the things that has come out of the conversations after seeing this released on the Android side of the fence is this renewed interest in a 7 to 8 inch
mhm,
Android tablet, a powerful one.
a
The closest,
powerful one,
the
because
close,
that is the thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, because
yeah,
that is the thing they did in here. Okay, they really make a powerful iPad Mini
yeah.
again.
That's the real challenge on the other side of the fence is how do we get something that has that power? I mean, the form factor itself, when Google released the Nexus 7, it was a wonderful form factor. Now, granted, it had bezels the width of the state of Tennessee, but it also happened to be just the right physical layout. You could actually slide it into your back pocket if you really gave a little bit of effort. It was very convenient to hold. It had that nice feel of this is bigger than my phone. I'm not kind of squishing down my behavior to work on the false small phone screen. I am working on a device that's scaled to me. That's really missing on the Android side of the marketplace right now, aside from either some strange third party Amazon based vendor, uh, a Fire tablet, which is software anemic and inhibited, or you're looking at a low end Samsung tablet, which does not provide support for any of the S Pen capabilities. You're always giving something up. This doesn't sound like you're giving much up. Now, granted,
Mhm.
I look at that as compared to their iPad offering, and you're talking a price difference of $170, $180 between the two. Then,
But I think it goes to two completely different markets. And I agree.
right.
I think the position they did, and I could be completely wrong, it's not for the person who is doubting, should I get the entry level iPad or should I get the mini?
Hmm.
The position is, should I get the iPad Air or should I get the mini? I think
Okay.
that's
So, what would compel you to get one versus the other?
the screen. So now capability wise, they are similar. Okay, pretty
Hmm.
close. Okay. So now, do you want the larger screen and the snap-on keyboard because you want to be more, or do you want more the consumption and easy to work without the keyboard portable that you can hold in one hand?
Mm. Okay.
So I don't think that they are intending to make you compare between the $330 and the $499. They are trying to make you compare. Okay, did I get a mini or did I get an iPad Air?
Okay. And that goes back to the beginning of our conversation where it's not really a positioning on Apple's part to draw in new. but it's to provide an option to the established base of customers to give
Correct.
give them a choice of, you've been doing this, now we have something new that you can get. And this could be an expanded ecosystem play. I could see this fitting in well with somebody who has the iPhone. They have a iPad Pro. They have a Mini. They have a Mac. They have the entire, they've got the watch. So they have completely bought into the ecosystem. In that combination of things that I just talked through, there is very little overlap physically between the devices. I mean, the Mini fits in between the Pro and the phone, fits in well. It has a usable life space, for lack of a better term. So I can see that being the case. But looking at some of the descriptions of features here, now you have a Mini, correct? And you use a
Mhm.
pencil on it.
Yep.
What's the experience like?
It's incredible. The pencil's still incredible, and that's when they have improved so much the interaction with the pencil, even with iOS 15, even more. That now I can got my pencil, and if I want to go Google, I can go tap on the pencil and write www.google.com, and it will get me there. So that's the reason I think this with the pencil too, will be something that you are going to hand to write more with the pencil than what you are going to try to type in this device.
So this is one that definitely gravitates towards that digital ink experience. It's
Yes, sir.
got, and I can see that working with the Samsung tablet I have. It just makes sense to use a pen on it. It's that form factor of being close to, um, not a legal size pad or not a letter size pad, but the half size pad, the journal
Hmm.
size. It just has that natural fit and feel. So, working with, we talked last week about mind mapping. I was using it today and I was using my mind mapping application on it. And I have the pen enabled so I can tap in one of the cells and write in the cell the text that's supposed to go in the mind mapping bubble. Well, then I never have to pop up that little virtual keyboard.
Correct.
That's a huge user experience benefit to me. It is a much more native type of interaction.
And it's a
Um,
more intimate interaction, but it goes back
it
to
is.
what I've been barking on the show. That's what I'm sharing with you. That was not what was shared. They didn't talk about that intimacy that you can have with this device. Okay.
And,
On
and
any of
that's
them.
that's what really surprises me. I mean, I have to admit, I did not actually watch the event myself. So now I want to go back and watch it and see what the feel is like it. But if that's what they failed to bring across,
Mhm.
um, could it
It's the
be that,
magic.
yeah, could it be that the energy is being saved for iOS 15? I don't know.
Yeah, but
I'm not.
iOS 15 is out next Monday. There is no going to be any other event for iOS 15.
So could it just literally be they're like, eh,
I don't
this
know.
year is what it is?
Yeah. This is a pandemic year and we get a free pass. I don't know.
Well, I have to wonder. When you look at a company who has such a known track record for creating
Incredible
creating
shows.
well, and the reality distortion field around their products, I don't see any of that right now around this.
No,
I
no.
really don't. I mean, I was talking about it with my wife, who is a very conservative technology person. She doesn't get things unless it really is going to move the needle for her. And I asked her about, for example, the watch, and she's like, "Nah, I'm happy with mine. I can keep it going." So that's a challenge for a company like Apple. That is absolutely a challenge to maintain that forward momentum. I'll be curious to see. And when we think about cross platform productivity options, this actually works to your favor if you're trying to come up with cross platform options,
Correct.
because getting these devices, you don't have to worry about it being outdated or discontinued within the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, and we were talking about that on the phone. The iOS 15 will support up to the iPhone SE first generation. That is a 12
Mhm.
2016 phone. Okay, so we're talking about 7 years at this
Mhm.
point, 6 years. 7 years, 8 years, well, 16, 20, 6 years. Okay, that's that's significant.
That's a
Okay,
significant period of time. That's a definite return on the investment that you're putting in to that device.
so if you are doing the same thing with the iPads and all this, fine, show them. But again, show that magic. That magic was sadly what was missing for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's I still really can't get my mind past the fact that they didn't have that spark. Because as you said, and we've covered multiple Samsung events
Yeah,
this year, they have learned the lesson of the old Apple presentations. They have taken it to a notch where even if they're releasing something that is kind of an incremental thing, it still feels energetic. You
correct.
feel
They're trying
there's
to show you the magic and how that's going to change your life, even if it doesn't.
they're
That was
following
missing on
the
this.
old awareness, interest, desire, and action model, and they're getting through the first three, and you're like, okay, I want to get this. I want to pre-order it. I want to order it now, and it's just not happening. At least it doesn't sound like it's happening.
No,
So,
no. I tell you, it was funny because during these events, my phone tend to break. Well, people know I'm an Apple fan. I have a couple, more than a couple Apple fan friends. So always, you see, this time was quiet, quiet. I mean, it was sad. It was to a certain extent even sad.
well, hopefully, I mean, it doesn't look like it's impacting the products any. I mean, the products
No, I
still.
don't. No, the people will
I'm just
still, but
I'm curious where this carries forward and how this carries over. But back again to the core of our show.
yeah,
It to me it demonstrates one of the most important tenets of what we talk about, and that's having reliable parts of your platform solution. Something that you can count on, something that's going to continue to contribute over time. And these types of things being incremental increases are something where you're not experimenting. It's a safe bet.
correct. Well, and I read somewhere that part of the reason the Apple event was so bland was the fact that they're having issues with the chipset, that they don't have that amount of volume. So they're trying to, okay, here are the new products, but we're not going to make a lot of noise until we are able to respond to the
That's
demand.
a
And that's a
that's a
possibility.
that's a very I'd say that's probably a very real possibility. You look at things. Samsung's catching grief for from
For the
some,
watch.
yeah, for display availability, and pretty much anybody who's working with some variant of silicon is having issues with supply chain and production. So ramping up a lot of interest in a product and then not being able to deliver, not a good look, and it's something to be avoided. Again, it makes me wonder with Google coming with their Pixel 6, and
Mhm.
that's going to be the first, by all indications, the first real flagship level phone that Google releases. Are they going to be able to meet the perceived demand for something like that? Now,
Correct.
granted, Google's never blown the doors off with sales of the Pixels anyway. They've always been more reference devices than anything else.
Yeah.
But this could potentially be the one that gets its legs under it and says, yeah, everybody wants this thing. Well, can they get it? And is it available? So it may be a smart tactical decision on Apple's part to say, hey, we've got neat stuff, and just get it if you want. It's here. It'll be available for you. You may have to wait a little bit, but it'll be here.
Yeah. So well, that was the Apple event. And follow us uh where you like to listen podcast, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on PersonalProductivity.club. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks, and see you next time from their favorite device that maybe